Hello, Internet. We're back for some more action, and you will notice that somebody is primed. I got sick of fussing around, so rather than trying to keep going with converting and doing other things, I wanted to get on with painting, so I figured I'd force myself to paint by priming, and then I can't really fuss around and do much more. So I got everything pretty much cleaned up where I wanted it. I just realized I didn't prime this arm, so we'll make sure that gets set aside carefully so we don't lose it. But yeah, look at this. Just to give you an idea of what this is going to look like now that it's primed and you don't see it with all the green stuff. Gives you a little bit more of an idea of what the product looks like. Pretty good. So this is the results. This is sort of what we're looking for. Now this has had some washes and stuff done on top of it to kind of add and push some depth. But this is sort of what we're going for. So it's a lot of layers. I've got a lot of paints, and when I paint, I don't do it really by recipe so much as I kind of do it by feel. So I don't write down my recipes for paint. I don't sort of like save it. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a pain, but not usually. I figured it out once, I'll figure it out again. So what I need to do first is get my airbrush pressure right. So we're just going to turn that on. Now what I am looking for, airbrush pressure was one of the things that kind of intimidated me before I kind of got working with an airbrush. The reality is just like anything, you can watch videos on it, you can learn about it, you can see it, but until you do it and start playing around, it's really not going to mean much. So, but just to give you an idea of what I do, I'm just listening. Now this is like pretty much full blast, full power, and that's obviously going to be too much pressure for blowing my paint through. So we're going to release a little bit of pressure. Now I paint with a lot more pressure than I feel like I hear a lot of other people using, like in the people using like the 10s and 20s pressures. I'm usually in the 30, 40 at least, even for detail work. That's still too much. I'm just listening. I'm listening and feeling. And the pressure that first comes out, it'll build up a little bit, so you want to hold on to it for a minute and really wait for that pressure to kind of even out. But I know that I'm looking closer to 40%. Oh, crap. Let's pause this, because I didn't plug in the good audio. We gotta have that good audio. Okay, so let's just check here. So we should be getting in the neighborhood. That still sounds pretty heavy duty. That sounds about what I'm looking for. So right now, it looks like I'm running at between 35 and 40, so probably 37, 38. So first thing I like to do, we're getting some condensation and liquid in here, and I've got a moisture trap, but that's really bad. That's really bad. We might be done before we start. That might just be some condensation built up from me priming yesterday, but if this is just going to do this the whole time, I mean, that's bad. I can't paint like that. That will not work, Internet. I mean, you can see, let me wipe that off. But sometimes that evens out, and there was a lot of condensation and buildup. Yesterday was really warm, really hot. I don't know exactly what causes condensation and stuff. I've got a moisture trap that doesn't seem to do a whole lot. What actually really works is I have a big coiled hose that goes with my air compressor, and if I use that before the airbrush hose, I actually get virtually none, but I kind of needed that for some tire pressure that was low on my tire. But we're spinning. Alright, well, let's see if we can get away with something here. First thing we like to do is I like to kind of lube up before I put in any paint, so just to kind of run some water through it. But before I lube up the airbrush, I'm going to lube up me. Island Vines ran a 10K last year. COVID kind of slowed things down. Had to do some remote stuff, bumping the thing, but what do we got here? We have, I know a lot of times I'm drinking beer in my videos, but we've got a Bogle Chardonnay. They're not too bad. One thing I like about these is you can find them in a lot of places. So it's nice to find like a reliable, trustworthy one that you can get, and their Chardonnay is really good and right up my alley. It's a little sweeter than I would like for a wine. I like my my wine's pretty dry, really low residual sugars, like 1% or less. But this one isn't too bad, and it's oak aged. A lot of times, for most grapes, I prefer, I don't know if I want to say prefer stainless steel. For most whites, I prefer a stainless steel as opposed to oak age, but Chardonnay gets a real nice buttery taste. So if I can get like a really kind of toasted, like apricot kind of dry oak Chardonnay, I'm happy, and this is pretty close to that. So that's really good. This is one's been open for a minute, so it's had some time to breathe. This is American Winery of the Year, Wine Enthusiast 2019. And they don't tell you anything about it on the back. That's what's tough about buying wine, I tell you. Some of them will kind of give you an idea of what notes and stuff you're looking for. Others will not. Most will not. So you kind of picking them out, you really have to buy it, try it, and then hope you can find it again if it's one you like. Or look it up ahead of time and try to know what's there. So it's not always an easy thing to do. Let's see how our air is doing. Hang on, let's run a little water through it. So what I found is the easiest thing for just having water on hand is just an old Elmer's glue bottle that I cleaned out thoroughly because I don't want to put glue in here. And just running a little water through. So we're just running water through. Nothing fancy. But that just kind of keeps paint from really, I think, sticking to a lot of the internal parts. All right, so what's the first? I should have lined up. So when I paint, when I airbrush, y'all, I do, especially something like this, I'm going to be using a lot of layers. So I'm going to find, I think we're probably going to start with this dwarf skin to start. It's going to be kind of a good base. Actually, no, before we do that, we think about layers of skin. And skin actually has like a lot of cool colors and stuff like that as sort of like a base. Where is my blue? So what I'm actually going to do, I've got an old crap brush here. See that? Super old, super crap. Super cheap. Oh, I wanted to shake these before the video too, because you really want to give them a thorough shake. You want to be, let me turn the mic towards me, a thorough shake. While I'm shaking this, I'm really curious how the audio is going to sound, because normally when I use just the iPhone camera, it does a pretty good job not picking up the airbrush, but with this sort of more directional mic, I'm hoping that the airbrush noise is pretty non-existent for you there, internet. Big shake. You really can't overshake them. Like, give them a good shake. You don't want mixed up pigment to sit in the bottom, and then your pigment isn't really mixed well. You don't have a good consistency of the paint. You want the paint to be consistent. Even from color to color in the same range, or different colors in the same range, you can get like a different consistency. Like I find some of these yellows are actually a lot thicker than some of the blue and stuff seems thinner. But if I don't shake them up, I'm not going to even get consistency in that same bottle, you know, from when I start that bottle to when I end it. Then I'll also have pigment stuck in the bottom, so I really want to juice it up. What I'm going to do is a little bit of purple. This purple looks kind of dark. On camera it actually doesn't. Compared to some other purples it looks kind of dark, but it actually comes on pretty light. So I'm going to put, I'm just going to count my drops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, where's my thinner? Where's my thinner? Right here. So 2 drops of that. Let's do. I was counting and then I forgot because I was looking for my thinner. So we're just kind of eyeballing it. A lot of times I'll count the drops though to get kind of a similar blend. We're putting a couple drops of this, and then I'm just mixing it up in there. Let there be light. Let there be light. Right, so we're just mixing it up in there. Focus. Focus. There we go. And I can see in there that is not. It's a lot bluer than what you're seeing, but it's not so much the blue that's not where I want it. I need water. I need water. Water. I need it's not so much the blue, it's too light. So we're gonna throw in a little bit of black too. Shake that up. So let's see what we got here. 5 drops of black. I should have shaken that black up more, but I'm kind of like, I'm rushing this process a little bit for y'all, internet, because I know you want to see the airbrushing. So that's pretty, I'm looking for something really dark, but kind of cool too. That's not quite where I want it. It's a little too cool, not enough warmth, so we're going to drop a little red in there. And I'm actually going to drop a little bit of this bad boy. Oh, no, not that one. Burnt umber, my favorite color. I actually should have started with this because I like this. What I'll do is I will save some of this, some of the skin, and I will do the burnt umber first, just to kind of lay down some shading and some. So we're mixing that up. That's sort of what I'm looking for. See, that's kind of. I forgot about burnt umber, which is my favorite color for painting. So I've got kind of like a cool, it's really not coming in here. There's a little bit of, there's the blue and the purple and the red really kind of give it some nice warmth. My timer's going off on my iPad. Everything happens at once, internet. So let's go stop that timer. We don't edit, right? So you'll just have to wait 2 seconds while I go over. Son of a bee. Mother effer. How much did we lose? Most of it? All of it? Oh, internet, you know, we don't edit, so we're just gonna keep rolling with it. This is what happens. I think I pulled the cable when I stood up, so at least it's not super glue all over my hands. And you know what? We wasted some of that, but that also means we'll be ready to use some burnt umber a little sooner. So, is what it is. Is what it is. I could get upset about it, and I'm upset a little bit, but you know what? We still have some paint in the cup, so let's see how it came out. Because I added a bunch more paint, I'm actually going to add a little bit more thinner. A couple drops of that. Mix it up one more time. Really try to push the brush in where the paint's going to be kind of in the nozzle first. That paint doesn't really get mixed up very well. And pop this on there. Let's see how our flow's doing. So there's the purple that I put in first. That's not what I want. There we go. You can see that color a little bit better. It is very cool. It is very purpley. That's what I'm looking for. Those underlayers of the skin. So when you think about this, you don't see your skeleton, right? Internet, when you walk in the street, you don't see your skeleton. You don't see the muscle, right? You see skin. But all that stuff underneath kind of builds a foundation of what you see at the end. So similar thing here. Like we want to start with some of these underlying colors that are going to be sort of like the deeper colors of the... Oh, jeez. This is going to be a... Oh, jeez. Why don't you tell me that there was glue all over my paint, all over my fingers, internet? We're going to be painting over most of this, so if anything, that'll just give it some texture. So, we're off to a great start. We're off to a great start. All right, anyway, so what I'm going to do is, these are darker colors, and I'm going to be focusing mainly on areas where I think there would be maybe more creases in the skin and more shading on the skin. So this is definitely going to be almost sort of like a reverse zenithal, kind of like low lights. And we got to paint. How do we got to paint? We got to paint like this so that y'all can see it and it doesn't focus on my airbrush. Stop focusing on my airbrush. All right, I'm going to tell it to focus. There. All right, so this is, you know, listen, when you're doing this is going to look weird for a while, probably. This is not going to be something where it just, you know, you're probably not going to trust the process at first, but trust the process. And then this is the bottom of the leg. This is going to be in there, so we're going to, and I'm pulling pretty far back. I'm trying to get a light covering. I don't want to put too much on at once. If there were veins and stuff showing, especially like when I was painting those Trogoths, they've got a lot of veins in their skin. Especially the Dankhold, like on his arm. So we're just sort of laying the shadows, laying those down in the dark areas. This is going to be pretty dark here. Oops. Bottom of the foot, around the ankle. Think of spots that are kind of like weird and, you know, reddish colored or like all kinds of different colors. The skin is like, if you think of it as kind of like maybe like one color or like a somewhat consistent color, but it really isn't. It's really splotchy and all kinds of different colors in all kinds of different places. Especially if you're of the paler persuasion. Us Caucasians, we're like, I mean, I know there's like the joke. I mean, I guess it's maybe it's not like a joke, but like how white people, we change color. We should be the ones called colored because we change color, right? If you're black, your skin does not change as much as like ours does, right? Not to say that it doesn't change, right? But you can get it. You can get like a sunburn or a tan or darker in the sun, right? But that really happens to us. If I get sick and I get pale, I get really pale. Like, you know, if I'm not feeling well and about to pass out. Anywho, I digress, internet. So that's not a bad start for where we're going. I'm going to put just a hint of it on some of this here. A hint of it on some of the highlights and stuff. Okay. That's not bad for where we're starting. Alright, so let's get this bad boy. That's going to make an annoying sound. I'm definitely going to try to mix up much smaller batches. I kind of forgot exactly how I was kind of doing this until I started doing it. That was actually just a little too much paint, but if the air compressor, airbrush starts getting some of that moisture in there and it just splats out one of those big bursts of paint. Maybe I need to lean this way so I stop getting the airbrush in front of the camera so you can see this. Alright, but this is like an armpit area. This is all like under. We need to put this on so that I paint these consistently. This actually should be glued at this point. There's no reason this really isn't glued at this point. Like, there's no real benefit to me having these parts separate anymore. Now what I'm going to want to do, especially because I've magnetized, is I don't want to paint too heavy where the arms meet yet. Because what I'm going to want to do is something like, well, let's just do it now. We're going to want to do a little bit, but then I'm going to want to put the other arm on and do it as well. I want kind of this color consistent. Right, so I'm going to want to do a little bit of this. In these creases. This is a pain to airbrush with y'all. I keep bumping the camera with the back of the with this right here. But anyway, so I want to do something like that, and then I'm going to add a little extra because I'm then going to want to oh, that's the other arm. I had them mixed up with the arm it was magnetized to. Because now I'm going to want to do it again with this one. And I'm focusing more on the arm at this point. I'm trying not to get too much on the body. But that's, we want to get them both even, so when I magnetize them, they don't look weird. So because of the, okay, this arm, let's look at it again for a second just to get an idea of the light. This is how that arm's going to be on. The dark's just going to be coming from underneath, so I'm going to be wanting to spray kind of from that angle. And because there's some good texture and kind of, you know, bumps or whatever you want to call it, like on the skin, hitting it sort of from underneath gives me that sort of zenithal type effect. Right, so I get that kind of action going on. Get under the armor. Grab this guy for a second. We got some buildup on the tip of our brush, our needle. Now I'm using a Iwata HPC Plus. A lot of people use the Eclipse, which is a very similar thing. I used to paint with this thing on there, but I don't find a huge difference in you having this on versus having it off for the type of stuff I'm doing. If I was doing super detail stuff, this would probably help, but I'm not usually getting that detailed, where I'm not cleaning up stuff around it after. And then I don't have to take it off every time just to go and do this, because depending on the paint I'm using, sometimes it builds up really quick. You can see that I did manage to bend my needle. Like if you look, it's bent up a little bit, still works, so we're just going to roll with it. But in case everybody noticed that and wanted to say anything, yes, I did bend the tip, but just the tip. That's way off frame. Alright, and then there's no transition of skin to the hand, so I don't have to worry about the hand in terms of the like the blend, but I do want to know like what part's going to be down, because by instinct you might want to think this is going to be down, but that's actually going to be the high point. So this is sort of the orientation, so we're going to start like that. Way too much paint came out. Now these are the early layers, so if I get a little too much paint and get some of those like tide marks, that's okay. Alright, we'll put a little bit on some of the higher parts just to even out that blend. I'm not really looking for a zenithal highlight effect, so I don't want it to be night and day, top and bottom. We'll put a little extra paint right here just to, if that's dark and there's any gaps, if it's dark it's going to show a lot less than if it's bright. So anywhere where there's going to be like a magnetic seam, I'm definitely going to want to darken that up. So alright, let's switch to the other arm. And then we'll start painting that. Yeah, this guy's got a lot of skin. It's going to take a lot of time to go back and forth. So I'm going to do these in 30-minute chunks. I might load multiple a day. I might kind of hold off and spread them out. Just that 45-minute video my iPhone was yelling about me about storage space and maybe delete a bunch of stuff again. It's just kind of annoying, so. I need some sort of like, you're out of frame warning. He says as he goes out of frame. Got a little more paint buildup. The more detail I'm doing, the less I'm pulling back on the brush, the less paint I'm letting out. The more it wants to like dry on the needle and build up. You can buy stuff, I haven't dabbled with it, stuff that will, that's supposed to keep the paint from sticking to the needle and drying on the needle. I've never found it quite so bad where I felt like giving that a try, but I probably should just to see if it works, if it makes your life easier. It can't be that bad, if it makes you happy. Come on. If it's giving you a little trouble coming out like this, I probably should need to thin it a little bit more as well. So the next batch I'm probably going to thin up as well. It's been months since I've airbrushed, so I'm a little rusty here. So you're seeing I didn't do any practice airbrushing. I just kind of came into this. So, and it's been a while. So it's been a while. Sometimes it's hard to tell if paint's coming out. You can just give it a little blast on your hand, and if I'm not seeing paint, then I know it's not coming out. If I do see paint, then I'm kind of sometimes where I want to be. Like, sometimes you want to be layering up those layers real light. So you don't want that much paint coming out to the point where you can almost not see it coming out. So this is going to be obviously a dark area. We don't want to know what goes on in this area. We don't even want to know. There are questions that you don't ask because you don't want answers. I'll tell you what question I do want answered is, how does this wine taste again? Fucking delicious. Let's bring the focus back just a little bit so I stop hitting the camera. I think that might help me. Let's have it focus here instead. Alright, so again, we're looking for creases, we're looking for spots where it's going to naturally be darker underneath, or where we think there might just be more coloration. So we're just using the muscles kind of as a guide. This is getting really annoying. There, you wanna f around? Okay. Another cuello? She la mi amor. That's a really bad Scarface, but you know, no Tony Montana. I am bumping the camera though. Focus. All right. Oh, I can smell the thinner. Yeah, we're probably much better now. He says as no paint comes out. What you want to kind of avoid is having to pull back so far that all of a sudden, like, it just lets a big blast out like that. I don't want that happening. I don't want, like, a big blast to come out, so. You can also see it's a little spotty. Let's zoom in for a second. Right, you see that? How it's kind of like a little spotty? It kind of gives a nice little texture, especially like on a base layer, and kind of makes it a little more matte finish instead of kind of like a glossy or satin finish. But that probably tells me, why did I take my focus away? As opposed to this that I just did that's a little smoother. So that kind of tells me I probably didn't have enough thinner in. That was another indication that we didn't have enough thinner. So here's what happens, right? You need, the thicker the paint, the more pressure you need. The more pressure you have, the more control you lose, and the more likely you are to, one, blast a lot of paint out, but to, two, also just not have control of the paint. Like, it starts to build up really quick, and then you start getting a lot of that type of stuff. You see that little line right by the tip of my airbrush, where you just let out too much paint. So if it's thinner, the pigment won't build up as much. You'll get a thinner, more even coat. You won't have to use as much pressure. And what I found is, there, internet, because you're building this up in layers, and you shouldn't be putting on so much that it is like too wet to, like, where it starts like pushing the paint around. You almost can't over thin. Like, I felt like that was like a much bigger thing, like trying to get your consistency right. Like hearing people talk about, like, oh, you wanted like the consistency of skim milk. See, that's just what I did. Because I've thinned it a little bit, I probably need to drop my pressure a tiny bit. But if I get a little control over this and I'm not pulling back as much, I can compensate for that a little bit. So, but if you get, you know, if you just thin it, you just thin the crap out of it, there's still a lot of pigment in there. And it will build up and it will dry, and you put it on in thin layers, and you kind of go back over it. That even gives you kind of almost like more control over the paint and the color. Let's go back up to this area up here. Now that this is nice and dried, it does not take very long to dry at all, but the thicker it goes on, the longer it takes to dry. So. Alright, so I'm getting some of my cool kind of colors laid out. Oh, the foot. There we go, bumping you again. So we're approaching, actually I did a couple minutes before this started, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop it here. I'm going to go until this paint runs out, and then we're going to hit up the next color. Excuse me, in the next video. So until next time, Internet, this might be more or less back-to-back videos. It might be another day. We'll see. Until then, cheers.